Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Safety Brief, the show where we cut through the jargon and talk real world cybersecurity that MSPs and even end users can actually use. Today's episode is all about building trust and long term client relationships. Because let's be real, trust is the foundation of everything in this industry and really in any industry. Sorry, cannot speak today. Joining me today is someone who truly lives and breathes this, our incredible partner success advocate, Kelsey. Thank you so much for being here.
Happy to be here.
Of course. So let's start at the top for this conversation. Why is trust such a critical part of cybersecurity, especially for MSPs and MSSPs?
Because, it's like anything that we do, even insurance, it's there when we need it, but it's also something that we have to trust that, when we pick up the phone call, somebody's going to answer. When we, reach out for anything, somebody's going to be on the other line. We have to know, just like, with as simple as it may sound, we trust that the sun's going to rise every day.
Yeah.
Even though we don't always see it go down the other side, we trust it's going to come up on the other side, in the next morning. Security can kind of be the same way in that we don't see it. We see the reports and things like that when those come up, but on the back end, we don't always see the back and forth. And so there has to be okay, I'm entering into this agreement. There is, you're going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do my part and trust that you hold up your part. So I think a lot of it has to come down to the fact that, you know, you inherently go into it with a trust. And as long as both parts deliver what they're supposed to do, that carries on. But there's ways to keep layering on and, um, solidifying that trust even deeper than
No, that
that
makes
initial
perfect
amount.
sense. Yeah,
Hmm.
no, that makes perfect sense. And I love that analogy that you used. And this is more Blockwork specific, but when it comes to the sun, it's well known. Everyone, trusts and knows about the sun and that it's going to rise every day. But when it comes to Blockworks, we're on the preventative side of cybersecurity. And because detection is the big buzzword in cybersecurity still to this
Yeah.
day, it's harder to say, oh, we have two suns rising, actually. You're like, what? Like, you have to see it to believe it, essentially. So I feel
Hmm.
like we have to solidify that trust and we have to build that trust with our partners even more because we're
Hmm.
offering something that a lot of people in the cybersecurity space don't offer. We're not firefighting, we're preventing the fires. And I think that's a huge impact. And that's why trust is so important.
Yeah, and in that case too, it's layered. It's not just an all-encompassing. There's different facets to that. With us in general, it's, endpoint to edge. There are layers that go in with that. It's not just one. Yes, we look at it as a holistic, and that's what we always want to look at it as, security as a holistic piece here. But there are layers still to that holistic piece, much like our own bodies. When we go to the doctor, a lot of us want a holistic approach, but there's many layers. Is it heart? Is it lungs? Is it, eyes? Those have different layers and different needs within them. And it's the same type of thing, with security too. There's different layers, there's different levels, and there's different needs within each.
Yeah, thank you so much for that.
Mhm.
And to move us on a little bit, and your experience, how are partners leveraging security to deepen relationships with their clients? Is there a way they position services, the tools that they use, or is it just something more subtle than that?
I think it's a combination of all because security is inherently one of those things that is just like, when we talk about security, it's more of a feeling, like feeling secure, knowing things are protected, things like that. So it's a really security in and of itself is difficult because it's an intangible.
Yeah.
You can, but when you dive into the tools, yes, we can get super technical, but when we're talking client relations, that's going to be more so on the, dreaded feelings side because there's do our do our end users and our end clients want to know that it's working? Absolutely. That's what they care about. They want to know it works. They want to make sure nobody's getting in and getting to the good stuff, which is their business,
Yeah.
and they don't want their work impeded. So it's more of this, yes, things are working and the tools are there in place, but they have this, they can check the box and feel good about checking that box that they are secure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
And
Well,
so,
let's,
oh, go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say, let's try to bring this to life a little bit. Can you share a story where strong cybersecurity actually helped retain a client after an incident, or maybe even strengthen the relationship?
Um, I know I believe we do have a case study on our community site, so a lot of our partners can go in there and they can see that. Um, I know there's been a couple out there. One that comes to mind is one of our customers. We talk about it was specific to more of the networking side with the Palo Alto. It was and this is from the relational side. Called us that there was an issue. They got the part drop shipped, which was Apollo. They walked in with it in hand, hooked it up, and it worked. And it was there. But it was that in a dire situation, call was answered, parts were in hand. They could confidently walk into the site where the incident had happened, hook it up, and go from there. And
Yeah.
initially, disconnect where the threat was, and it was on the firewall side, and then put in another preventative tool and a better solution, and then confidently be able to know like, huh, okay, from here we can take it and we can go there. But it's two-sided. They got the appliance and the tool that they needed, but then also that call was answered, the urgency was felt. And that's where that relational part is. Okay, we need to be able to relate to our clients on, okay, where are they at? Where are we at in this meter? Where are we at in what's happening? And if we mirror it to our best ability, now mind you, best efforts always, that sense of urgency in that time of need, okay, they have my back. And in that is building that trust. And there is a security that can be felt with that, hey, I know if I call, there's an answer. I'm going to get what I need, and then I can do my job effectively because I'm supported on the back end.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And just coming from the SOC, we had a lot of examples or, a handful of emergency onboardings where clients were actively under attack, and they would skip the typical tuning phase instead of starting
Oh,
in,
yeah.
in detection only. They were onboarded immediately with prevention enabled. This meant we could stop the threat in real time, preventing further movement or damage. So not only did we stop the attack, but we also helped partners quickly understand what was happening behind the scenes.
Hmm.
Um, and what made it even more effective was that the tuning happened after the onboarding. So when alerts started rolling in for legitimate activity that needed to be whitelisted, it was a moment of clarity, I believe, for the MSP and for the client. They saw exactly what we were preventing. There was no question about what are you doing or is this worth it, because they saw the power behind the platform, and trust was followed after that because it started with them seeing the tuning process. Now, typically we try to enable detection only first, so we don't send out those alerts and we're not having to do as many whitelists for you. We do
Yeah.
that prior to putting on prevention just to help lower the end user impact in a sense. But for those clients who were onboarded immediately, we never got the question of what are you doing? Is it worth it? They saw, you know,
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
proof in the pudding right away.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it comes with the like, we talk about this all the time, here at Blockworks, which is um, oh, I just blanked on it. But of course, I go to say something and I'm going to lose it.
The
But
sword and the samurai? Is
no,
that what you were
well,
gonna say? Oh.
no, it's the trust but verify.
Oh, yes.
It's the automation with human validation. There it is. There are things about this that can be, automated, but that's also where you have that trust built in there too. You have those automated, you have the parts and pieces in place, but there's also the verification that happens on the back end. They're like, hey, this is being watched, this is being monitored, this is, we're trusting these things to do their job, but they're also being monitored. They're also being verified at the same time. And I think that, you know, with reporting and with the documentation pieces on the back end or being able to see what's happening through the ticketing portal, that's that trust. But there's also the verification that happens in there too, because trust goes a long way, but we also need to see it at the same time. We need to see, that data, and always the end customer is going to want to see, those things too.
And it goes back to the sun analogy, right? If you had been inside your entire life and never seen the sun and only heard people talk about it, you might want to see it before you believe it, right? Like, what do you
Yep.
mean there's a big giant fireball in the sky outside that brings us light every day? What? Like, it doesn't sound crazy to us because we see it every day, but to someone who's never seen it or experienced it, it's hard for them to understand. And of course, they need to see it with their own eyes or
Yeah.
understand it better. So, no, that makes perfect sense.
And I think prevention is kind of that mindset too, is
Yeah.
that for a long time in the industry, prevention is not as highly talked about and or is not always at the forefront of a lot of discussions. And it almost in some cases, and having worked in an MSP, back in the day, and that's where I, got my start, it wasn't I'll be honest, back then I was like, prevention? Sure, that sounds too good to be true. Like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's that, and that was, years ago, and I know better now. I know much better now, but it's that type of thing. And with that analogy too, it's like, yeah, that sounds all great. That sounds good, but,
Is it
seeing is
true?
believing. Is it true? And
Yeah.
or it sounds too good to be true. But that's where having the documentation or being able to see the different things, whether that is, a POV, proof of value, or something like that, that's where, you can talk about these things, but then you can also bring in that other piece with those sight lines as well.
Yeah, and another analogy, just to keep it going here, is we talk about the medical field a lot.
Yeah.
Preventative care is not taken as seriously as I think it should or could be. The same with cybersecurity. The same with a lot of, industries. There's a lot of preventative approaches with a lot of different industries that people just don't believe in or don't really pay attention to. They'd rather react than be proactive. And I think that's something that it's a mind shift, right?
Hmm.
Not only do you have to believe that the prevention can indeed prevent what could happen, but
Hmm.
it's just a better mindset. You get peace of mind, less anxiety, in
Hmm.
cybersecurity case, less alert fatigue, and so on. But let's flip the coin here a little bit.
Yeah.
What are some common mistakes MSPs make that unintentionally erode trust with their clients around security?
This one, I mean, this is not to make anybody look bad or feel bad or anything like that. And I'm going to speak from a point with having worked with other vendors, having had those engagements back and forth. And I'm going to speak from that front. I'm not going to pick on the MSPs or anything like that. But anytime like I engage with a vendor personally, the things that I have come in contact with that erode trust or that would be good things to avoid are the lack of transparency, lack of ownership, and anytime, you know, the finger's pointed in another direction. Um, and I've had this happen to me with engagements with other vendors that I've worked with. As my husband and I have our own business, and so when I speak of other vendors, I'm talking about that industry, which is automotive industry. So, but in speaking with them, you know, I think that just engagement on a engagement with a trusted partner in general, this I think applies here. And it's, you know, a lot of times I'm of the opinion, okay, this happened. I don't care whose fault it is at this point in time, but how do we fix it?
Yeah.
And if we focus on who's at fault, what happened, breakdown, rather than the fix, that's like, okay, what do we care more about here? Is it me and getting me back going where I need to go and just fixing the issue, or is it finding out, where the blame is or where the breakdown is? And I think, and that's, that eroded some trust I had with that vendor on that side. Another thing, being asking questions to find out what happened and not really getting a straight answer. Or, and that goes along with, us here at Blockworks, and one of the our core values is candor and
Yep.
being transparent. I trust someone more when I can get a candid response or I can get a candid answer, and I think that goes hand in hand with transparency. there. And again, transparency can be, it doesn't have to be, well, here's everything and here's showing everything. It's just like, okay, this is what happened. There was, maybe there was a mix up here and this was missed. It doesn't have to be a complete word vomit of anything and everything. It's just keep it very, tell me what happened. If there's a breakdown with a person, okay, I can move on. I don't need their name. I don't need what time it was. I don't need, just this is what happened. This is what we're doing going forward to make a change so this doesn't happen again. And then, these are things that, and just owning, like if I pick up the phone and I'm ordering, for example, since it's automotive, we order some tires. It gets lost somewhere. Like I call back, you know, 4 days. Hey, haven't heard anything. I put in this order. Oh, well, let me check. And I call back and I don't get the same person. I get another person and then they have to check. And then I keep having to follow up and nobody on that side is owning. Like if I had just one person like, hey, I'm going to look into this. I'm going to call you back by this time, or I'm going to give you a call back by the end of day today. I'm going to let you know what I find out, if I need to get anybody else involved, but they're owning it from that point on. They're not just going to see me calling in, let somebody else answer it, and then they're looking, you know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
there's that. And that helps with trust too. Is like I know I'm going to be taken care of when I call. They're going to track my tires down. I'm going to at least get when they're coming, what's happening, or something's happening because I have somebody that's owning it and seeing it through. And I that helps restore that trust too. I think those specifically, those types of cases can be applied, no matter what industry you're working in.
Yeah.
Because, even if we call for, insurance or anything like that, those are things we want to know too. I mean, medical field, go back there. We want, we have a bill we need to chase down. We want somebody to like own it, the communication, those pieces, and not get like four people in the office and have to explain the story four different times. So,
Yeah, it sounds like they are needing an incident response plan. And you may think to yourself, incident response plan in automotive and healthcare? Yes, incidents don't always have to be ransomware, malware. It doesn't have to be
yeah.
cybersecurity. If you have it in place, like you said, they were trying to finger point instead of finding the issue and fixing it. That's why you have an incident response plan. If you have to know who did it or what happened, you have that in place. What's most important? What happened? How to fix it. After that, then you can find out why it happened, who did it, and all that stuff. If that is something that is important and needs to be discussed or disclosed. But having that incident response plan will lessen your downtime or time of panic or whatever the industry may be or scenario may be. But an incident response plan is needed across all industries, not just cybersecurity.
And I think that when it comes down to it, and we're talking about trust, or whether it's building trust or eroding trust or anything like that, trust in general, at the end of the day, even though it's cybersecurity, even though we're working in platforms and with tools and things like that on computers and all of that, it always comes down to we're still working with people. And we cannot remove the people aspect from the equation. We're working with people who are going to have bad days, who are going to have, questions, who are not going to understand. We're working with people,
Yeah.
and that's the biggest thing is that those that comes into some of those soft skills, I think, is the right word for it, of just engaging with people, making sure, okay, making sure we're not escalating a problem. We're, working towards a solve and de-escalate, because at the end of the day, that's who we have to work with. We have to work with people. If,
Hmm.
it's no matter what it is, cybersecurity or other, or we're working on computers, but there's still a person that operates that computer, so there's still a person involved. And I think when we're talking about client relationships and things like that, yes, we can prove that on the other side, but it's the human that we truly have to build that trust with,
Hmm.
on an interpersonal level too, of Simon said it. He has a YouTube video, and I believe we've talked about this before,
Yeah.
in a previous conversation, of it's about the golden circle. And one of the big things he said is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it,
Yep.
which is flipping the script from the what, which would be, in IT, computers, software, etc., the why. That's the person. That's that client relationship. They're going to, come on board with that mission or that who we are as we engaged with them. And I think that's a key piece when we're talking about this in general is that trust and building those long-term relationships is we're doing that as people first and foremost. And they're going to identify with why we're doing this and why we're taking their protection. And, like we say here at Blockworks, we're defending livelihoods.
Yeah.
That's not just a fancy sentiment that we put out there. It's you talk to our people, that's what it's about. And you can
Yeah.
hear it in the inflection of voice. You can hear it in what they do and try to do for our partners. But that's why we do it.
That's
So,
why we're all in preventative and not detection
hmm
only.
yeah,
Sorry, slight jab. Now,
you're
you brought
fine.
up you brought up transparency quite a bit. We both did, and that word gets thrown around a lot, but it really
Yeah.
does matter. So, from your perspective, how does transparency impact long-term trust, and what should partners be proactively discussing with clients?
So I saw this video pop up in my feed one time, and it was like explaining the difference between honesty and transparency. And they're very
Hmm.
different. And so honesty is you ask me a question, I answer you honestly, like, hey Kelsey, what are you doing this afternoon? I can give you a laundry list, but and I'll be honest about it. Transparency is we're engaging, hey Elizabeth, and we're talking about, different things we need to get done. Hey Elizabeth, I have this and this afternoon. I'm going to be meeting with these people at, you know, this time. And that's transparency. I'm just letting you know where I'm going to be at rather than which is still honest, but it's a form of honesty that is just given versus requested. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so when it comes to, the long-term trust and those pieces, transparency is, hey, we're seeing these things that are coming out. It's before the question is broached. Hey, we saw this happen. Here's what happened. This is the steps we've taken to remediate, or, maybe not remediate, or even if we catch something, it's like, hey, this was done. This is what needs to happen from here on out. It's before it gets called into question, to be honest. And so transparency is not always just waiting to answer. Transparency is offering that information or knowledge out just freely in a
Yeah.
lot of ways.
Well, in the cybersecurity industry, a lot of the times people don't practice the transparency. When you hear about a breach, it's normally reported by the actual attacker, and
Mm-hmm.
then the company then comes out and says, "Oh, by the way, yeah, you and a million or 1,000 other passwords were leaked.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry." So that transparency goes a long way. If I got an email from a company saying, "Hey, we experienced some issues, we got attacked, we apologize formally, this is what we're doing to resolve the issue. We appreciate your partnership or, you being a trusted client of ours," versus me seeing it on the news,
Yeah.
two way different
Yeah.
reactions there. And it goes back to reputation because yes, when an incident happens, you're going to take reputational damage no matter what. If it was not prevented, there's going to be reputational damage, but there's ways to mitigate the amount of reputational damage. There's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And, even us as Blockworks, we do PSAs. We send out emails of who, what, when, and why. Or I think, what is it? Who, what, when, where,
Where
and yeah,
and why? Yeah.
and why. And we truly fully detail that. Who does it impact? Why is this happening, or why do we think this is happening if we don't have the full answer? What is happening exactly? And how does it impact you and our resolve time as well if it is an issue that needs to be resolved. And transparency doesn't always have to be for negative news or there's a
No.
breach or there's this. It can also be for positive news. You know, we have
Hmm.
this coming out or a new update's coming out. I'd rather get an email stating that we're getting an update rather than logging into the portal. Not to throw anyone under the bus, but I logged into a portal today and it looks completely different and I had no notification of, hey, there's an update. So I was taken back. You know, it's nice to get that email or some sort of notification to say, hey, this is what's taking place. This is what it may impact. This is what we're seeing. If you have
Hmm.
any questions or problems, reach out to us. You know, it goes a long way.
Yeah, and that's I think the difference between there of, transparency and honesty. Both are important. They absolutely are. Honesty is like this is what happened, this is what was done. That's honest, yes. Transparency is like you were saying, is the who, the what, the where, the why. It's
Before the
further,
question.
yeah, or even sometimes like that could be in the works and the question still comes in, but it's still going that above and beyond just that extra 1% to provide just a little bit more. And like you said, it could be something too, not always like a something bad that happened, but something good. There's companies out there that'll put on their website, and and we do this through our good works. They put parts of revenue go towards this, whereas some, you hear about it on, and it's like, I think it's one of the most famous ones is like Red Cross, how much is actually going to, those that need it versus like the CEO, and stuff like that. But when you dive into it, you see it, but they don't just come out and like explain why. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's things like that where, something good could be, if not given the appropriate amount of information, can be, it's just all in how it's delivered. And
No,
I
I
think
completely agree.
that's key. And that comes back to we're dealing with humans. We are dealing with people with thoughts, emotions, you know, and and their environments that are around them. And those are all going to be in play when we take in new information or are engaging with anybody. And I think that's the biggest thing that we have to remember is that we're all people. We all go through things. And if we, it's that age old adage of, you know, if I wouldn't want it done to me, I don't want to do it to somebody else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you
No, I
don't
love
want,
that.
and that's what it comes back to. If we're talking about trust, we're talking about engagement with people. If I want somebody to be honest, transparent, and do all these things that I've said today, I have to emulate that as well. And if I'm not seeing it, I need to be the one to step up and to, lead by example in some cases. And sometimes that's hard. Like, I don't
Or
want
even
to make
ask.
it, yeah, I don't want to make it sound like it's so easy and that this is common sense and da da da. Because we're working with people, it's hard. If we're honest, it's hard, but it's worth it. That's the other side is that all of this is worth it. Those long-term clients that that you can call up and if you've gone to like that trust, sometimes it builds to, hey, you get a wedding invitation. Hey, you are one of the first people to hear that they're having a kid.
Yeah.
You get like, it gets past just the service that we're providing. It's like, if we're talking about
Relationship.
long term, like interaction, I've sent onesies to clients that, I've heard that they're having babies. Sent onesies. I've gotten, you know, I've gotten a call and I'm one of the first people to hear that somebody passed in the family. That like my heart breaks with them because again, I'm dealing with a person. And
Yeah.
so, sending something, doing a little bit, being that 1% a little bit better than anybody else that they can engage with on a day-to-day basis, you know, it makes a difference.
Empathy goes a long way.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
One thing I love to do, and this is totally off topic, but anytime I go into a women's restroom and there's another person in there, I will find something, anything to compliment them on because one compliment can change that person's entire day. Imagine you're having a bad day and you get one compliment. You get one compliment in the bathroom and that could change your entire day. So, Spreading
Yeah.
kindness is very important, but
Yeah.
we have been focusing on the human side of trust a lot this conversation. So let's talk about the tools a little bit here.
Okay.
How important is documentation and reporting, like dashboards, regular reviews, or even simple summaries, and reinforcing that trust?
I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier with the trust but verify. Yes, I want to, I trust the team is doing what they're supposed to do. We're an extension of the partners team. We're trusting, but there's with reporting and with having, the logs and things like that, we can actually see it, which then as our partners are engaging with their end clients, it's also that um, you can see the value of the service that's being. I am secure, but I'm also getting good value with it too. Because I mean, I know we've all heard it of, well, I haven't heard anything, I'm not seeing anything, so what am I really paying you for?
Yeah.
That it's one of those things. Well, that's a good thing. In this case, no news is good news. Like we're preventing it. That's what that inherently means. But I think it comes back, but having the reporting to show, okay, you're not seeing anything because here's everything that's been prevented. Here's what's come in. Here's, the different pieces that have been taken care of that you didn't know about so you can operate as smoothly as possible and have, that peace of mind that you're not going to have an interruption.
No, that makes perfect sense. So, to close this off for today, if you had to give partners three takeaways they can use right now to start building more loyalty through their security stack, what would they be?
Whew, on the spot.
Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, like I was saying, and I know I focus on this, but this is just a part of my role, and that's, my whole title, is being an advocate. It's the human side. We're dealing with people. And at the end of the day, it's, a lot of times it's not what we do is important, but how they feel is important too. Like they
Yeah.
go hand in hand. So that's number one. Number two, um, have a plan, like a technology roadmap or a plan of something that if they're starting at a point continuing through so that they can see that it's not just a hey we got to this point and we stay at this point and it's going to be good. There's always going to be a roadmap. There's going to be a plan of okay, you guys are going to be here but you're going to evolve and you're going to grow. This is what that would look like at this point. So it's you know when I say this all the time with our partners, when you grow we grow.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what we're saying. Hey, when you guys grow, we grow with you and we make it so that this plan is accessible. I'd say that. And then number three is that, having that trust but verify that automation with human validation is going to be super important too, because while we're trying to be efficient, while we're trying to be effective, while we're, trying to make things as streamlined as possible, we're not perfect. Nobody, we can have all of these in place, but
Not
something can
even
happen.
AI.
No, I mean, us as people, we're not perfect, and so, but we have to, and if we're always constantly focusing on, the bad, or the one time something hits, we're negating all of the good that happened over here too. So that trust but verify and that automation with human validation, we got to take in, okay, a few things are going to happen, but we got to know the overwhelming majority is going to be good. And it's
Yeah.
there as, and we have it there in that validation and or verification, but also that, hey, it's going to be what we make it. So there has to be an involvement in there too.
I know those are great. Well, I think it's also exactly what this industry needs more of, not just protection, but true partnerships, that level of empathy and understanding. So, well, Kelsey, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your insights today with the audience. And to everyone listening, if you're looking for ways to turn security into a trust building engine, you're not alone, and we are here to help. Head over to blockworks.com to learn more about who we are, how we help MSPs inform and empower their clients. Until next time, Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you guys.